Go ahead, Don.
Why do I need forgiveness from an invisible mass murderer?
Why do you need forgiveness?
From an invisible mass murderer.
You're welcome to another episode of Learning Together. My name is Tosin. An atheist called God an invisible mass murderer. And that's what we want to look at today. But before we go into that, some years ago, a friend of mine told me a story of how he almost took his own life, but was saved by another friend. So this guy told me that there was a point in his life he was fed up with life and he was on his way to take his own life. He had a rope with him and he was heading towards a tree that he has sighted before. So on his way to this tree, he met another friend on the way and they started talking, they started, making jokes. And this friend of his noticed that he had a rope with him and he asked, "Friend, what do you want to do with this rope?" So reluctantly, he told his friend what he wanted to do with the rope. He said he wanted to hang himself. So this friend of his just laughed at him and he thought he was joking. And he asked him again, "What do you really want to do with this rope?" And he told him, he said, "Friend, I'm serious. I want to take my own life." So his friend now told him that if you go through with this, if you take your own life, you are going to hell. And they started arguing about it. He said he owns his life, he wants to take it, there's no way he's going to hell. So while his friend was trying to convince him otherwise, he realized he couldn't convince him. So he told him to come with him to his house to speak with his father. So my friend reluctantly followed him to his house to speak with his father. While speaking with the dad, the man counseled him and told him that if you actually take your own life, it is like you are committing murder. You are not going to heaven, you are actually going to hell. So after much counsel, my friend actually changed his mind and he deleted the thought from his mind. You see that Christianity, Judaism, and Islam all have their foundation the from Abrahamic monotheism, and they all share this core tenet that human beings do not own their own lives. Rather, life is a sacred trust granted by God that only God has the rightful authority to end. So these three religions, which came from Abraham, Abraham is the founding father of these three religions. They all have this common tenet that life was given by God and can only come to an end by God. And it's only God that have the rightful authority to end it. The reason this atheist called God an invisible mass murderer was because of termination of life as recorded in the earlier part of the Bible. So, for instance, the story of Noah in Genesis chapter 6, chapter 7, and chapter 8, which is generally known as the flood, is and some other things, some other stories like that, is why this atheist called God an invisible mass murderer. But let's look at this story in context. But before we do that, I want you to know that perception is very important. The way I present a story to you is very important. The way an atheist presents a story to you is more important. Let me say that again. The way I present a story to you is very important. The way an atheist presents the same story to you is more important because our intentions are different. This is where context comes in. If I present a Bible story to you for proper understanding, I have to present it to you in context. If an atheist presents a Bible story to you, for it to fit their purpose, they have to present it without context. This brings us to the story of Noah in Genesis chapter 6, chapter 7, and chapter 8. They refer to it as genocide. And genocide is a modern legal term coined in 1944. But before we go into all that, we want to see the similarities and differences between God and man. Now, the relationship between God and man in Judeo-Christian theology is defined by a unique paradox. Man is created to mirror God, yet remains fundamentally distinct from him. Here is a breakdown of the similarities and the differences between God and man. Now, in biblical theology, humans share specific traits with God because they are created in the image and likeness of God. Now, I said we want to look at the similarities and the differences between God and man. Actually, before you can look at the similarities between two things, these two things must have the same essence, which means there are two things that can actually be compared. Let's say you want to look at similarities between two brothers or two cousins. These are two things that have the same essence, so it is reasonable, and this is something you can do easily because they have the same essence. So it is difficult to compare two things that does not have the same essence. For instance, humans and God. Human being and God does not have the same essence. So it is difficult to pull out similarities from between humans and God. But between two humans, maybe a sibling, or between siblings, it is easier to bring out or to identify similarities between siblings or between cousins or between two objects that are similar. It is easier to get similarities from two objects. So in biblical theology, humans share specific traits with God because they are created in the image and likeness of God, according to Genesis 1:26 to 27. So we have the spiritual nature. God is spirit, and he breathed his own breath of life into man, giving humans an immortal soul. So, first, we need to understand that man is a reflection of God. So, it's like when you're looking at yourself in the mirror, you're actually looking at your own image in the mirror, but you are not the one in the mirror. The person in the mirror does not have the same essence as the person standing in front of the mirror. So, that is how man and God is. Man is a reflection of God. So, according to the spiritual nature, God is spirit. Also, another similarity between God and man is our rational mind. Humans possess high intellect, reason, abstract thought, and the ability to create language, mirroring God's supreme intelligence. So, man mirrors God in this aspect. The way we reason, the way we speak, the way we create languages, we actually mirror God in these areas. Also, in creativity, God is the ultimate creator. Humans express this attribute through art, technology, architecture, and innovation. So, man also reflects God in creativity, although God is the ultimate creator. And what God creates is different, quite different from what man is capable of creating. We know that God gives life, God creates life. Man can also create, but man has not yet created life, and that is impossible for man to do. Man cannot create the same thing that God creates, even though man can also create, but man cannot create the exact thing that God creates. Also, another similarity between God and man is moral conscience. Humans possess an innate awareness of right and wrong, reflecting God's holy and just nature. Also, the capacity to love. Humans can give and receive deep sacrificial love, which mirrors the core character of God. And lastly, rulership and stewardship. God is the sovereign ruler. He granted humans dominion to manage and care for the earth and its representatives. We want to quickly look at the differences between God and his creation. God is the ultimate creator. So the differences highlight the infinite gap between a boundless creator and a finite dependent creation. So God is eternal. God has no beginning and no end. Man had a specific beginning point in time. Also, God is all powerful while man is limited. God is omnipotent. Man is physically weak and limited by nature. Also, thirdly, God is all knowing, while man is constantly learning. So, God is omniscient, whereby he knows everything, past, present, and future. Man must learn and study and possess flawed understanding. Also, God is everywhere, is omnipresent, but man is localized. Man is limited by a by being in a particular place at a particular time. Also, God is self-sustaining, while man is dependent. God needs nothing to exist, but man relies entirely on God for air, food, water, and life. Also, God is changeless, while man is mutable. God never changes in his character or nature. He is the same yesterday, today, and forever. But man constantly changes physically, emotionally, and mentally. Also, God is flawless in holiness, while man has a fallen nature. God is perfectly holy and cannot sin. Man is morally flawed and prone to sin. Now, the reason why I'm doing all this, showing us similarities and differences between God and man, is to let us know that we cannot put man or we cannot put God in the same boxes. We create these boxes that we put man in. We cannot put God in that same boxes. We cannot put God in the same category that we put man. So if a man does something wrong, from the human's perspective, that could be wrong. When we look at it from the human perspective, it could be wrong. Now, if God does the same thing, because God and humans, God and man, does not have the same essence, it might not be wrong if the same thing was done by God. Why? Because it is logical to say, if you create something, you have 100% right on your creation. So let's say, for instance, a man creates this microphone. If the man that creates this microphone decides to destroy it, I don't think anyone will have a problem with the person that created this mic, because he created it, he has the right over it, he can destroy it. So if God makes a thing, creates a thing, then God should have 100% right over his creation. But when we talk about God, or when we put God in the category of man, we are actually looking at God from the wrong point of view. Now, as I said, perspective is very important. The way a story is presented to you is very important. And the way you perceive it, your perception of it, is also very important. So we are looking at the next phase is explaining mass murder or genocide. Now, genocide is as I said earlier, genocide is a modern term actually carved in 1944. The term was carved out in 1944. So anyhow you look at it, either you call it mass murder or you call it genocide. It depends on your definition of it, how you choose to define it. So the earliest genocide in the Bible is the Great Flood, which is defined as the complete erasure of human population by a divine act. If defined strictly as human-led warfare targeting specific ethnic group, now if you decide to define it from the human's point of view, you can call it genocide. That is, if it is human-led, if it is human beings that decide to wipe out a particular sect or group of people or a tribe, that is what you can call that genocide. So what is the event? Why did this event happen? Now, God sees that human wickedness has corrupted the earth and decides to wipe out all living things. So this is God's reason for taking this step, for eradicating every human life, apart from the life of Noah, his wife, his children, and his sons and his sons' wives. Now, God does not necessarily need to give us reasons why he acts the way he acts sometimes. But if we have the opportunity to learn why God acts the way he acts, is to our own advantage, and it's an opportunity for us to learn more about God. Now, God as the author of the Bible, could have stopped this story or any other story from coming up in the Bible or from appearing in the Bible. Because the Bible, the common Bible we have today, has 66 books. There are many other Bibles that have more books than that. And some people still debate it till tomorrow that why do we have 66 books and why not the other versions that have more books. So if God himself, as the divine author of the Bible, does not want some stories to appear, he could have removed it. He could have made sure that it did not come up in the Bible. But for this kind of story to come up in the Bible is because God himself wants us to learn one or two things from it. We need to first establish that you are responsible for your creation and you can do as you wish with it. So the label calling God a mass murderer doesn't really make any sense. So the fact that someone somewhere calls God a mass murderer doesn't make any sense, because if you have the right on your creation, then whatever you wish, you can do with it. So the reason why it is annoying to an atheist, the fact that God decided to terminate the entire population on earth around that time, is because they put God in the same category as man. Now, if it was a man that did the same thing, I'm sure everybody we all agree that that is a wrong thing to do. Why? Because a man cannot create life. So a man should not have the right to take life. So the only person that has the right to take life is the creator of life, which is God. So that is why the label calling God a mass murderer doesn't really make much sense. As I explained with the mic earlier, that if the creator of this mic decides to destroy it, he does not have a case with anyone. No one will challenge him for his actions. So if God decides to destroy what he creates, I don't think any one of us should accuse him for anything. God is not obligated to tell us why he does the things he does. He's not obligated to explain to man why he performs some actions. Also, the scale, it's the entire globe. The entire global population is destroyed, save for Noah and his immediate family. Now, Noah and his family were the only ones considered holy at the time. Now, God could have stopped the event. Probably God could have tried it just to prove to people that were on earth at that time the extent of his power. While the flood was building up and people realized what was going to happen, God could have drained the water and not allow that to happen. As I said, many things could have happened in this story. God could have made sure this story did not appear at all in the Bible. But for it to appear, it's for a reason. It's for a reason. Now, also, as I said, God could have stopped the flood as it was building up. God could have stopped it and made sure that no one was hurt. But it's God's decision to do what he did. He creates the life. He decides to take it. He's not obligated to explain himself to any one of us. And also, this is a direct act of divine judgment rather than a human military campaign. So the distinction between God's action, or whatever you call it, and genocide, which is caused by man, is that it is a direct act of divine judgment and it's not a human military campaign. A similar event occurred shortly after with the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah in Genesis chapter 19. So it was more or less the same reasons why God destroyed the people in Noah's time, and the same reason he destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah at the time. No one was found holy. And we want to compare this act to the Holocaust in 1933 to 1945, when Hitler took power. Out of Hitler's primary genocidal act was the Holocaust between 1933 and 1945. The systemic state-sponsored persecution of the Jews and murder of approximately 6 million Jews by the Nazi regime. Now, this was an act that one man decided to wipe out 2/3 of an entire sect of people. Hitler can't create life and definitely has no right to take it. But he almost did. He almost took an entire nation. He almost took it out. And if we decide to compare both, it's not something we should compare because Adolf Hitler had no right to take life because he didn't create life and he cannot give life. God is the creator of life. He creates life and he has the right to take it. And atheists present a story to you. In order for it to fit their purpose, they had to do it out of context. And there are also many things that that atheists find to be wrong in the Bible, and we are going to talk about it in some of it in the next episode. So the next episode we'll be talking about slavery. Now, from an atheist point of view, and from the Bible point of view, from the Old Testament's point of view, from the New Testament's point of view, and in our modern day point of view. And if you don't know, slavery is still much on in our modern day. It has just taken another form. So we are going to be looking at that in the next episode. Thank you very much. Stay blessed.